Chapter 18. Jarrett lay wrapped in his pleasure, utterly enthralled. He hadn't dreamed love-making could be so piercingly sweet. He still couldn't believe how freely Annabel had given herself to him after all his harsh words. He must have been mad to think she was using her body to reel him in. He'd never seen a woman approach the act with such innocent joy. Guiding her to her release had been a delight beyond any he'd ever experienced in the bedchamber. And now what was he to do with her? Could he really just ride away from her in the morning? The thought made something twist in his chest. Good God, when had he become so besotted by the tart-tongued Brewster? He must be mad, or she really was a goddess come to earth to enchant him. Jarrett, she murmured softly, pressing her hands against his chest. He must be crushing her with his weight. It wasn't like him to forget himself so completely with a woman. He slid off as much as he could and flashed her an apologetic glance. This bed wasn't made for two, I'm afraid. No, she said with a little shiver. It dawned on him how naked they were. You're cold. He grabbed the folded blanket lying at the foot of the bed and pulled it up over them. Better? Thank you, yes, she said, her voice shy. He'd never seen her shy. It enchanted him even more. Am I too heavy on you? He asked, since half his body still covered hers. Their legs were entangled, and her arm was trapped beneath him.
What do you mean by this? The amazement and horror depicted in the unfortunate John's face, who had rather expected to be embraced next, were of that powerfully expressive nature that Mr. Dorrit withdrew his hand and merely glared at him. "How dare you do this?" said Mr. Dorrit. "How do you presume to come here? How dare you insult me?" "I insult you, sir?" cried young John. "Yes, sir," returned Mr. Dorrit. "Insult me? You coming here is an affront, an impertinence, an audacity. You are not wanted here." "Who sent you here? What the devil do you do here?" "I thought, sir," said young John, with as pale and shocked a face as ever had been turned to Mr. Dorrit's in his life, even in his college life. "I thought, sir, you mightn't object to have the goodness to accept a bundle of—" "Damn your bundle, sir!" cried Mr. Dorrit, in irrepressible rage. Don't smoke." "I humbly beg your pardon, sir. You used to." "Tell me that again," cried Mr. Dorrit, quite beside himself, "and I'll take the poker to you." John Chivery backed to the door. "Stop, sir," cried Mr. Dorrit. "Stop. Sit down. Confound you, sit down." John Chivery dropped into the chair nearest the door, and Mr. Dorrit walked up and down the room, rapidly at first, then more slowly. Once he went to the window and stood there with his forehead against the glass. All of a sudden he turned and said, "What else did you come for, sir?" "Nothing else in the world, sir. Oh, dear me, only to say, sir, that I hope she was well, and only to ask if Miss Amy was well." "What's that to you, sir?" retorted Mr. Dorrit. Clennam, much affected, stretched out his hand to this honest spirit. "Before I take it," said John, looking at it, without coming from the door, "guess what message Miss Dorrit gave me?" Clennam shook his head. "Tell him," repeated John, in a distinct, though quavering voice, "that his little Dorrit sent him her undying love. Now it is delivered. Have I been honourable, sir?" "Very, very." "Will you tell Miss Dorrit I have been honourable, sir?" "I will indeed." "There's my hand, sir," said John, "and I'll stand by you forever." After a hearty squeeze, he disappeared with the same cautious creak upon the stair, crept shoeless over the pavement of the yard, and, locking the gates behind him, passed out into the front where he had left his shoes.
Harper Audio presents After You Believe, Why Christian Character Matters, by N.T. Wright, Bishop of Durham. Read by Anthony Ferguson. This book is a kind of sequel to Simply Christian and Surprised by Hope. There I set out, among other things, what seems to me a basic principle of early Christianity, namely, that God the Creator intends to bring heaven and earth together at last, and that this plan has been decisively inaugurated in Jesus Christ. This vision has radical implications for every aspect of how we think about Christian faith and life.